Don in London, hello. November the 10th. My videos all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. And November the 10th. It's an interesting day for me. My father's birthday, or the anniversary of his birthday. And he too had a problem with addiction to substance and behaviour. Beer, whiskey, cigarettes, trying to feel right about life. Never quite got it. And I didn't know he was an alcoholic, really. Or if he was, I didn't really take notice of him being an alcoholic, because after all I drank like him, and we stood on our own 2 feet, and we were the last men standing when it came to the amount, capacity, and I suppose wanting to enjoy life, wanting to find a way to live life and be happy. And I guess in his own life my father had great difficulty. Very bad start, not a very well child, adopted by a couple of people who probably weren't very well equipped to look after some young foundling, I guess, in some ways. But the good news is we found that he did come from a good family, but as was the way of life back then, he wasn't allowed to stay with his mother. And she was a very good person, and nobody knew about my father in the family except my father's mother's mother. And what a sad state of affairs that was. So he didn't have a very good start, and it got worse. So he drank to find happiness and also drown out his sorrows when things didn't go too well. So I guess I followed in his footsteps, and I was very lucky to realise in the end that no amount of drink will ever provide me with happiness or an outlook on life which is real. And these days I prefer to live life real life based on reality as it is, not some fantasy, not some superstition that it will be alright if I do what I think is right. And it got me into all sorts of interesting binds, interesting ways of living, interesting ways of looking at the world, where I thought I was in control of what was happening. And indeed what happened was alcohol got the better of me, it was in control of me, it shaped my outlook, my way of living, and it tormented me in the end, because I couldn't actually find any solace or any happiness with a drink inside me. And I'm really glad I got to that stage and was still alive to understand that alcohol was killing me, that it had power over me, and I was codependent on it. It had become my best friend. I don't know when that started, probably from the first drink, when it fixed the way I felt. I didn't feel fear, I felt happiness. I didn't feel sad, I felt joyful. I didn't feel left out or insignificant, I felt like I belonged. And that was an illusion, a fantasy, because we all belong in some way or other. And if we don't belong, we need to move on and find somewhere where we do belong. So for me, I did a lot of things in life because I felt I ought to, because I was fearful, because I didn't know it was okay not to know how I might be able to live life one day at a time. So the big change around for me is I don't drink one day at a time, and life happens. It can be happy or sad as life offers. I'm not in control of the external world. Indeed, I'm powerless over people, places, things. And if I think I have got power over people, places and things, life does get unmanageable, and I'm a prisoner of my own thoughts and feelings. So where am I now? Well, a little bit into recovery and courtesy of help, which I never thought I would be able to get from people who knew how to be sober one day at a time. Luck had something to do with it, or simply being in the right place in the right moment, where I realised no amount of drink was ever going to make life worth living, that no amount of wishful thinking or fantasy or superstition was going to make my life change. I had to put in the action, and the action simply was this: ask for help. And once I started to ask for help and say, I don't know how to get sober on my own, professional help came along to get me dry, from alcohol and stop shivering and shaking and rattling. And then they suggested maybe I needed more help on a daily basis. And I said, well, where is that? And they said, Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, what? And reluctantly I went and had a look at AA. I was a bit of a tourist to start with, observing and judging the experience that other people were having, rather than saying, hang on a minute, do I fit in here? Could I be a part of this? And if it hadn't been for some very, very gentle, caring people, I would have exited and never returned. There were haphazard attempts in the past, but once I realised it was down to me, how could I change and what could I do? And listen to people who seemed to have a better understanding of how to live sober, then I would be dead. So the good news is I'm not dead yet. I will be eventually, but I would have been dead by now had I kept on my drinking path, because it made me feel that my life was insignificant and not worth living. Indeed, I was just insignificant to myself and to other people. So I needed a little bit of courage, faith and confidence to start to develop a new way of living. And it was tough at the start and horrible, because I was frightened of not being good enough to be in recovery, not being good enough to find out how to be sober. And it took a while to say to myself, okay, let's start from scratch, let's start again, the whole thing, life, because I've got to a place where I just don't know how to live anymore. And that was a desolate place. So I'm very lucky. The fellowship of AA is not the only way to get sober, but it works for me on a daily basis, because I know and understand and relate to people staying sober one day at a time. And the good news about AA is, first and foremost, I don't speak for it, because I never can, never will. I can only share my experience, strength and hope of how recovery is going for me. And if I left out the fellowship part of it, I would be hiding the truth of what works for me. I just had a quick look on the internet, and there are over 3 million connections to websites to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. And there is only one connection to the official website of AA, which gives general information about what the fellowship is and how it works. So I sort of augment that by what I say here, and it's just one person's viewpoint. That's my viewpoint here. But I'm wholeheartedly and absolutely a fan of recovery, and anyone wanting to be in recovery and finding ways to do it. So the way which works for me is fellowship. And because I am sober today and have lived longer, I have other clinical conditions which need attention from professionals. So AA fellowship is for sober, and the rest of life requires input from different types of organisation and institutions. But AA gave me the freedom to choose life again, to live life one day at a time, and it does the same for every single person who wishes to find out a way to be sober. It may not be the way you prefer, and that's perfectly okay. But the fellowship is one size fits all. That's human size. So if we can go in trying to be open, honest and willing to change our attitudes and behaviour to find out how to be sober, which is painful at the start and then becomes joyful as we go along, and then life takes over, where it's joyful or sad as life is. So I don't speak for AA, never can, never will. If I were to say AA will fix your problem, it would be a lie, because it can't fix anything. All it can do is illustrate by people sharing their experience, strength and hope, and we sort of make friends with each other. Even if we don't agree on the simplest of things, we can agree on one thing: sober today is better than anything else, because then we get our choices back. It won't make us good or bad people, that's our job. It won't make us like other people, it just doesn't work that way. It won't make you take on or adopt things which are wrong for you, because you are the person you are. the greatest gift for me is learning how to love people, be loved back, and useful again. And that's as good as it gets. But what happens next is as life is, reality. So I'm very lucky. A fellowship which focuses on emotional and spiritual well-being. So emotionally, knowing what my feelings are in the moment, and spiritually, learning how to cope with life as it is. Spiritual for me is living life, living reality. It's not just the good bits, it's the difficult bits as well. So the spiritual experience for me is living life on life's terms, living reality, whatever is happening now, and understanding what is the next good thing in good conscience to do. And I don't have to know who I am or say this is me. All I can say is this is me now, and by the end of today I know a little bit more about who I am and maybe who you are. And that applies to all experiences of life, not just fellowship, because after all it's only 1 or 2 hours a day that I may focus on what's keeping me alive today. Or might be once or twice a week I see people in fellowship, or 7 times a week, depending on what's happening, how I'm feeling, and what I need to do. So the fellowship is a very, very broad church, including people who have a desire to stop drinking, and that's as simple as it is. You don't have to adopt anything else. If you've got a desire to stop drinking, want to find out how to be sober, or need to find out how to be sober, then AA may be for you. But it's attraction, not promotion. So attraction, what you see is what you get. Sometimes it's not very attractive because people are fed up and horrible and can't stand life right now. But then other days it's a mixture. Good, bad, indifferent. That's the way it is. So what you see is what you get. It's attraction, not promotion. If I were promoting something, I would say I know better, but I don't. And I know it won't fix people. People learn how to live a new way of life. So repairing, progression, as opposed to fixing and making perfect, or making good. I suppose it is making good, actually. Making good on what is. Making good with reality. So what is AA? I share the AA preamble here, some of the daily reflections that are provided from the fellowship, and some of my own reflections on times past and times present. I call these things the 12 steps in action, because there are 12 steps that we can adopt, 12 life principles, the toolkit of how to live life, real. And I feel okay today, learning and understanding more about love. Unconditional love is what love is. It doesn't have any conditions attached to it. And knowing the rightness of loving people is absolutely fantastic. But also knowing that we can love people and know they have a completely separate life to lead, which is also good. You know, we sort out what is right in the moment as we go along. So I've had a lot of thinking and feeling going on in the last few days about the possibilities, the truth of now, what it is to love, and do so unconditionally, day by day. Works well, and we let go of control or power. Feelings are always truthful. It's what we do next which might undo us, the actions which may follow, whether it's right or wrong to follow a more difficult path of denial rather than acceptance. But those are things we learn as we go along. So what is AA? The AA preamble, which is on this little card here, it also has inside it. So if you go to a meeting and see this card, it's worth picking up. Not picking up a drink, but picking up the card. This one, because it's got the 12 steps and 12 traditions in it. And when you go to AA for the first time, you think, well, no, what's this about 12 steps to keep well? And what are these 12 traditions about? Well, the 12 steps offer a path of open, honest and willing to live life one day at a time, freedom to make choices based on truth. And the 12 traditions are about holding the fellowship together in unity, service and recovery. And one of the most important traditions within the fellowship is understanding that you have the freedom to be you. Tradition 1 says clearly, no individual should impose their will or their views on you as a person. But unity is absolutely paramount when it comes to meetings and how they are run, and how the fellowship organises itself in a very loose way. There are no leaders in AA, no spokespersons for AA. So when I talk about AA, I'm not speaking up for it to defend it or to promote it. I'm just saying how it works for me. And that can be quite contentious in this electronic age where anybody can share their views on anything. Oh wow, some post. We can share our views on anything on the internet. We all have media communications if we're lucky, and we share our views if we feel inclined to do so. So I was asked, share your views on AA because it's working for you, and this was an ask by the people in the National Health Service in a treatment scenario in London, in Soho, because they had half the people there saying, well, maybe they would go to AA, and maybe the other half said they wouldn't go to AA because it was a religious, dogmatic cult. So I went with an open mind, well, half open, half drunk, and realised that nobody was going to tell me what to do. Nobody was going to say, follow my path and I'll make you a millionaire, or make you so sober you'll never have to worry again. They said, you know, life is difficult, and if we are sober it's easier to deal with than not sober, or in my case, keep on drinking and you'll die. That was the medical opinion. They wondered how I'd survived so long. So I'm very lucky to be alive at all. So the AA preamble, it reads like this, with a couple of additions by me, which are just to be clearer, if you like, on what AA can do, can't do. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. So clearly, sharing experience, strength and hope to help others recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, and that's it. That's the only entry requirement, a desire to stop drinking. No rules, laws or regulations, but there are traditions to keep fellowship a safe place for people to find the truth of who they are. Not to hide from reality, but to find a place of sanctuary. That's how I see it, and that's my personal view. But it's not too far off where everybody is. A safe place to discuss the truth so that we may find sober ways forward rather than drunken ways forward, or thinking which is old style, old behaviour, which will cause turmoil and internal madness, as well as making other people mad at us too. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, so it's always free. But we are self-supporting through our own contributions, so we don't have outside help. We put some money in the hat to help pay for meeting space, rent, tea, coffee, biscuits, literature, and a bit of admin. So if we can contribute, we tend to. But you don't have to. There's no have to. There is no must. There is no should. There is no ought to. It's a personal decision how you wish to behave and what you can do. And sometimes people just don't have money, and that's perfectly okay. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. So this is a point. There are no spokespeople for AA. Nobody can impose anything on you. AA is what you want it to be. A place of sanctuary, hopefully, to find out the truth of who you are how to keep well and sober and live a life which is possible based on reality. So although the fellowship is not affiliated or part of anything else, and has one primary purpose, which is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety, you will hear people who have religious views, agnostic views, atheist views, political views, medical views, every view you can possibly think of under the sun, which is helping them to keep off the drink and sober, whatever sober means to them. So you will hear from extremes of one side of the argument around faith to the other side of the argument around faith. At the same time, everybody is allowed to have their own opinion of what is right for them. And if we try and step on the toes of other people, they often retaliate, verbally, hopefully only. But, it's a real life situation where people need anonymity and sanctuary to resolve their issues on a daily basis. So it's 24/7, depending on where you are. There are more meetings in London for me than I could ever go to, 700 a week or more. And we just try to do what we do. We live life on life's terms. And sometimes we get on together and sometimes we don't. But what I never share here is AA is this or that. It's just the way it is today. And I think the great fear in the early days of the fellowship forming were anonymity needed to be maintained at the level of press, radio and films, because what on earth would people make of AA if a person didn't stay sober and was in the public eye? Well, as we know from the examples in history, it's a very hit and miss affair sometimes whether people can maintain their sobriety under extreme conditions. So when in one of the pages of literature it says, "Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path," that is true. At the same time, reality may make a person pick up a drink. The worry was that if people were seen to be failing in their sobriety, regardless of the fact that they may have had 1, 5, 10, 20, 30 years sobriety, they may have been taken up as examples of failure. Now the good news with AA, the fellowship, is we always say keep coming back. Why do we say that? Because it's not easy to maintain sobriety in early days without the support of people around you. And the very last thing that anybody wants is for the fellowship to collapse, because it becomes I suppose, what's the word, an unsafe place where things don't work. 99% of the time on a daily basis things can work and people stay sober, but there is the odd 1% where we will get turned over, find madness and find ourselves in a pub, a bar, a restaurant, not realising that if we had actually said, hang on a minute, this is a dangerous, extreme set of circumstances, what am I going to do about it? The simple answer is to keep in touch with people in fellowship, or whoever it is that you can confide in, before you get to take that first drink. Otherwise all bets are off. And there's nothing wrong with admitting that. There's nothing wrong with saying that it's difficult for people to get sober, because everybody knows it is difficult to get sober and maintain it, because the option is trying to find happiness with another go, with drink, or trying to find oblivion because life is so awful. Problem is, every time we go back for another bit of research, what we find is we have a high tolerance from before to the impact of alcohol or whatever the substance or behaviour may be, and we have to do more of it to get back to any sort of result we might feel is right for us. And in so doing, the body is weaker and we cause damage, seizures, death as a result, and then great unhappiness for the people around us, or relief that we're gone and they don't have to face us anymore. Those are the sorts of things that can happen. So anonymity, sanctuary, absolute sanctuary to find the truth. Because if we can't find the truth, how on earth are we going to deal with reality? And reality can be very unpalatable. Sitting on a park bench in a comfortable front room with the top end of luxury is, do you know what? It was easier to sit on a park bench than actually deal with my problem. I just didn't want to know me or life anymore. But something said, if it can't get any worse, why not go and see AA again? That's what I did. So I went with I accepted it was going to be horrible and difficult, and I had to work on it. And it gets no easier for any other person either. But it's harder to keep on fixing than it is to try and get well, is where it got to for me. And I thought, well, if it can't get any worse, surely it can just get a bit better somewhere. And it did. Anyway, the AA daily reflection for today: a sense of belonging. Perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation and prayer is the sense of belonging that comes to us. And you know, we do pray and meditate all day long, even if we don't think we do. There's an inner voice inside us which is speaking to us. It's saying, go down the pub or go to a meeting. Go to a meeting, don't go down the pub. Bugger AA, I'm off and I'm going to go drinking. All sorts of things going on. These are meditations and reflections in our own head. But if we look to the good of what we need to do on a daily basis, we probably need to make conscious contact with what works. Conscious contact with reality. Conscious contact with our good conscience. And so for some, and for many, conscious contact with the truth of now. Some call this God. So for me, God is truth, love and wisdom, and I still don't know if I could ever define God, other than God as a concept works for me today. The concept I've come to understand, the absolute truth of now, how to love and be loved back, and learning the wisdom to live life, usually through the help of other people who have wisdom of life. So I don't get fearful about this word God, and I don't get fearful about religion. I don't belong to any religious faith. But I do know spiritual is, for me, the ability to cope with reality, and that's been said by many a cleric in many a religious organisation. So whatever your thoughts about the hereafter, or the here and now, is your own personal stuff, and long may it be that way. What works for you is what works for you, and I'm really pleased it does. But I had to come to an understanding of, I am not God, and I am not the higher power, and I'm simply making progress on a daily basis based on reality, seeing reality, the truth of now, and getting the wisdom of life as it happens. It doesn't mean I get the right answers, or the wrong answers. It means I get some sort of answer and make progress. That's what it is, belonging, this sense of belonging. After a session of meditation, I knew that the feeling I was experiencing was a sense of belonging because I was so relaxed. I felt quieter inside, more willing to discard little irritations. I appreciated my sense of humour. What I also experienced is my daily practice daily practice of prayer and meditation is the sheer pleasure of belonging to the creative flow of God's world. And that's for me living in the reality of now, life on life's terms. How propitious for us that prayer meditations are written right into our AA way of life. It's actually written into all life. Conscious contact with reality, conscious contact with a higher power, is understanding where you are today based on all the externals plus how you're feeling inside. So it's an inside job, this thing called sobriety. Once we start to get well, where we feel more balanced, our outlook is more full of faith, courage and confidence, or we develop faith, courage and confidence. Sometimes it gets knocked again, and it's not all going to go our own way, and life is going to throw up problems for us, where we find we would like a situation to be one way and it can't be. But at the same time, we need to honour our feelings of love towards other people. And that's really important, because we don't need to stop loving people, loving one person, loving lots of people, as we do. We need to be real about real life, and what is possible and what is not possible. So we can daydream and have fantasies and wonder, what if? But it's better to keep our feet on the ground and recognise love is love. And then beyond that are all the other natural instincts which can make life very difficult, no matter what our age. And I'm getting on a bit. Anyway, my thoughts this morning. And it was based on something which was asked of me. What are these traditions? What about the tradition of anonymity at the level of press, radio and films? Well, if I was out there using AA as a means of promoting me as a person, or getting something extra out of it, or making money on the back of it, I think I'll be very unhelpful. But I don't do any of those things, and I don't get anything from telling people or sharing with people what's happened to me, other than you have to give it away to keep it. And if somebody asks you to do something which is helping people who cannot get to meetings for whatever reason, or don't want to go to meetings because it's too public, to even go to an AA meeting where you are anonymous, or there's only one meeting in 50 square miles, if I go there, what will people think of me? Well, probably the truth of that is, if you have a problem, most of the people around you know you have a problem, because they're not stupid, and the only person you're fooling is yourself. But anonymity is sacrosanct for me. It's a place to find the truth of who I am on a daily basis, without having it broadcast on media. But you see, I don't feel that most of anything I have to share is going to undermine anybody else's recovery, and I'd be very careful not to, because undermining other people, even if I were angry with them, would not help. It wouldn't help me, and it wouldn't help them. And the whole point of the fellowship program is open, honest and willing to learn, love people, be loved back, and useful. And it's not useful to undermine people. I may complain about what they do from time to time in a general way, but I won't tell you their names, and I won't tell you where they are. It just isn't the way to do it. So we learn what we learn, and if people were being defamed, they'll be on my back in no time, no doubt. I wouldn't do that. It's not in me. It's in me to get angry and upset, and I'll do it face to face. That's the only way to do it. And the one thing that you will find in fellowship is gossip kills people. If people feel that they are being discussed in any way, shape or form by 2 or 3 other people, and they get to hear about it, that can kill a person, drive out self-esteem, faith is lost, confidence is lost, and they're out there again. So the level of press, radio and films was about protecting the fellowship and not giving an unrealistic viewpoint. Well, my viewpoint is equal to the 3 million other websites out there. That AA can work if you work at it. But it's not about being pushed or made to do something. It's about choice and freedom, open, honest and willing to live life truthfully as best we can. But you know, every day I can come up with fictions and stories and tall stories to embellish and exaggerate to make a point. That's why truth is so important to me. Sometimes I can't see the truth for looking at what I'm doing, and I need impact. I need feedback from people in fellowship often who say, "Hey, you're a bit off beam today, what's going on?" So my thoughts: fellowship, organised chaos it is, and an anarchic democracy kept me coming back, a place where I truly belong, freedom to find out who I am just for today. Organised chaos, yes, because although there is no organisation in fellowship, meetings seem to run, tea and coffee often are available, literature is often available, and people share their experience, strength and hope, and then go off, live life. And nobody can tell you what to do. They will try and tell you what to do when they feel that their opinion is better than yours, but you can tell them to bugger off and mind their own business. But also consider what they have to say and whether it fits in with your outlook, as long as you don't hurt them. Sometimes people's feelings will get hurt, but it's not deliberate. Or if it is deliberate, we need to look at our own behaviour, and why did we do that? It's because we feared something, probably. A sense of belonging took a while when I first got to AA, this is me, full of fear, putting on a brave face, and shame and guilt could have catapulted me back out into drinking. Because the worst thing is, nobody wants to be an alcoholic, or an addict, or self-harming, and shame and guilt will keep us away from the solution very often, which is learning how to live all over again. A few people shook my hand, said it was going to be okay. I would feel awful for a while, but there was hope. Courage, faith and self-esteem have grown to help me live one day at a time, and face the music and dance. So it's not all... We're not Puritans in AA, and because we've been tempted to the very nth degree by substance and behaviour, we did know how to get our jollies in life, one way or another, until we were overwhelmed and could not stop self-harm. So Let's Face the Music and Dance is one of those numbers by Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, which really, even in my childhood, black and white films like that, which were all about love and silliness and cherishing people, they captured my imagination and helped me form a reasonably decent outlook where I would do the next right thing automatically, not only for myself but for the people around me. But it didn't mean I really did what I wanted to do. I was diverted off my path by a whole series of events, just like everybody else, and then I had to cope, and I couldn't cope. How did I cope? I took a drink, a fix, fixing on work, relationships, things. But alcohol ran all the way through as my best friend. So these days, no drinking on a day-by-day basis, just one day at a time. So that's my time frame of life. So if I know by the end of today life has worked out, whether I'm happy or sad is not the issue. It's how was I able to cope with reality. That's the spiritual connection for me. And if I know what my feelings are, I may go to bed unhappy, but I haven't had a drink, and I will have resolved in my own mind and accepted probably just where I am today. And acceptance comes in the serenity prayer, which I always share at the end of my videos. You know, for me life is based on this: open, honest, willing to live life. Helping myself with freedom of choice and helping others develop their own freedom of choice too. How to love, be loved and useful, and keep a mind's eye or an eagle eye, or whatever it is, to open to be in unity, service and recovery. I'm not taking advantage, not being codependent, something having power over me. I'm certainly not having power over other people, or taking advantage of them unfairly, coveting their life even, and their life to come, which is on my mind a bit at the moment. But the good news is, having a good moral compass, and if I'm uncertain, people around me, if I say I just don't know what to do about this situation, I could ask for help. Didn't need to ask for help on this issue. Plain and simple. So we develop as we can develop, and the good news is you can go to AA from the age of whatever you need to, and there are many young people in AA, and a lot of us old folks as well, who are happy to be alive one day at a time, all of us. You know what, it's great, you know, there's ages from, I don't know, even just into their teens through to 90-year-olds still shuffling along. It's all good. The serenity prayer helps anyone anywhere, no matter whether you're in fellowship or not in fellowship, remind ourselves of what's important, can do, can't do. What I can do, change me, my attitudes and behaviour. Look at the big picture. I can't change you, your attitudes and behaviour, or try and make the picture right for you, but I can be aware of you being in my big picture as well. So it's about level, equality, understanding, and being realistic with life as it is, real. So whether you believe in God or not, atheist, agnostic or believer, and understanding that you're not God is a good place. That relinquish power when it's not yours to have over other people, places and things. And if you're hanging on to something like an Italian Prime Minister, or a Greek Prime Minister, or a German Prime Minister, or Chancellor rather, or an English UK Prime Minister, who is so up his own thoughts, feelings and opinions that he can't see the wood for the trees, and has ministers about them full of the inconsequential stuff of life. And it might be just a diversion they're operating to send us off track, so we don't look too much at the economic situation and why it's so bad and why the whole world is in turmoil. Who wants to look at that truth? Well, we all need to, and we all need to understand where we are and the impact it's having. So that's again the serenity prayer. I'm going to say it now. Can do, can't do, wisdom to know the difference today. So to God, or in good conscience, wherever your beliefs are, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, real life, courage to change the things I can, me, my attitudes and behaviour, and the wisdom to know the difference in the moment, as it is, perfectly imperfect and just for today.